Thank you for coming to the session today. This concept of the hero's journey came to us about a year and a half ago, as one of my colleagues and I, actually he's no longer with us, Dan he's a grad of Harvard University, one of the smartest guys I know, but as he and I were sort of brainstorming on what could we bring to the masses that might be interesting, and it would really parallel with what we do every day in our custom shop. And as we kind of started thinking about it, we thought this concept is something that we often are using to help craft engaging e-learning that really takes the experience to the next level. And it's so simple, we even had to think for a minute, what is it that we do when our instructional designers begin a project? How do we actually think about what to weave into the narrative to make it more than just a game, to make it something that actually goes to a deeper level? So this concept of the hero's journey came to us, and we thought, wow, so much of what happens in effective storytelling already uses these elements. And so we wanted to put some words around it and some pretty slides. And I promise there's a theme with the boxing gloves. We'll get there in a minute. But how many of you have heard or have at least some familiarity with the hero's journey? Oh, I think almost all of us. Excellent. Maybe that's why you came, because you thought, oh, I know about that. This concept really, we pulled from Joseph Campbell's work, and Joseph Campbell was heavily influenced by Carl Jung, who was a psychoanalyst, Swiss-born psychoanalyst, died in 1961, so he heavily influenced a lot of mythos, really, and Joseph Campbell pulled from some of his philosophy work on mythology and really developed a model. It's a 12-step model for what makes an interesting story and what makes it compelling. So what we'll do today in the 45 minutes or so we have together is I'd like to show you what we mean by it, right? I'd like to show you the model itself. We'll make these slides available, obviously. We didn't do anything with the model. We simply pulled it from some sources that we found. But I'd like to show you how we've applied it in at least a couple of different examples in custom e-learning courses. You may know that eLearning Brothers does have a product team, and the product team brings you incredible things like customizable courseware, digital asset libraries, templates, cutout images, all the things we're known for. But we also have a custom team that helps our clients when they need helping hands or they don't have enough internal capacity. Our custom team started around 2013, so been about 5 years in business, and we've just been having some incredible adventures with a lot of different clients who are looking for different solutions. Well, in fact, one of our clients will be at Demo Fest tonight. I'll be sitting with Ally Financial, who's one of our clients that we've had for many, many years, and we'll be showcasing some similar stuff. So anyway, that's one of the divisions that I'm in. But let's talk a little bit about the hero's journey and these learning games. So I'm going to share a couple of facts regarding learning games that you probably already know. This is some quick facts that I got from my friends at the game agency. I don't know if you've met some of those guys. They're actually across from us over here. But this concept of 8 seconds, really, of the amount of time you have to grab a learner's attention. And then about 5 minutes, the amount of time you can hold it. By the way, every time we throw these stats up here, I always get asked, where are you getting those stats from? And then I always say, well, either go talk to Carl Cap or go over to talk to the game agency guys. They'll probably be able to give you the most accurate stats. But this concept, it feels right to me, based on what we're experiencing in the world today. Especially when it comes to e-learning and the current generation of millennials and this Generation Z, right, which we're, I think, all trying to cater to. That 8 seconds is something that we feel strongly about on the eLearning Brothers custom team, right? It's got to look good. It's got to look interesting. It has to look somewhat compelling. When it comes to the concept of storytelling, are you familiar with the concept of in medias res? Am I saying that right? In medias res? That might be how it is. Thank you. It's this concept of dropping the learner right into a story. Are you familiar with the beginning of Star Wars, A New Hope? Well, when you start that story, where do you begin? You begin with the scrolling text. You're dropping right into the middle of, well, really what's happening. Darth Vader is boarding this rebel ship and is, looking for the battle plans that have been stolen by the rebels. Well, you're dropping right into the middle of the story. That concept of storytelling, when you think about it for a minute, think about your own e-learning that you're building, you could probably do that. You may not be doing that near enough if you're doing compliance training, let's say, on some topic regarding what you can and can't say to a customer. What if you dropped right into the middle of a customer conversation where the rep or some associate in your learning audience is about to say something to a customer that they probably shouldn't say, and then the learner now has to evaluate that? Very often we start with, you're now about to see a scenario where, but how jarring might it be if you click next and you're right in the middle of the story? So some concepts like that, I think, help to really build the kind of narrative we're talking about. So I want to talk a little bit about what the hero's journey is. I mentioned it's a 12-step model. We broke it down by kind of the top half is this ordinary world, right? Steps 1 through 4 happen in the ordinary world. Steps 5 through 12, I should say 5 through 10, happen in the special world. Okay, and then steps 10, 11, and 12 come back into the ordinary world again. And this can be just as simple as it sounds, right? Think of this, any story that you know, and I want to point out again, this is a theory that has been widely popularized over many decades. Again, many of you have heard of it, that really supports the fact that compelling stories have these factors, they have these elements. Oftentimes, we as e-learning designers and developers might say to ourselves, we don't have the time to do all of that. I can't craft a story with steps 1 through 12. I'd like to challenge that thinking a little bit during this session to say, you may have more time than you think you do. It doesn't take a lot more effort to do some narrative and some thinking around a story. In fact, when I did this session at ATD ICE a few months ago, we had somebody come up to me afterwards and say, you know, we went out to the floor, out to our operations team, and asked for authors or storytellers. And guess what? We found aspiring authors and storytellers in the rank and file of our learning audience. And so we said, would you mind working on a special project with us here in the training team? Would you craft a story for me that follows these steps, that is very basic about our day-to-day jobs? I think they had a couple of English majors, a literature person. They actually had to narrow it down because a lot of people were like, yeah, I'd love to do that. In their spare time, or maybe their boss would give them a few minutes off. You may not have the time to do something like this where you're addressing all the elements. It's very possible somebody in your organization might. And then I love that because what you're doing is you're engaging your learning audience, right? You're engaging your learners with the content because they help create it. So you may have heard of some of these concepts already. You're in the ordinary world. You see that call to adventure, right? Somebody comes and challenges you. Gandalf shows up in the Shire and messes with Frodo's life, and right, he's the call to adventure. If you see Bilbo in The Hobbit, he refuses the call. Bilbo won't do it, right? He doesn't want to, and the dwarves mess his house all up. I'm going fantasy because that's really what I love a lot, right? You meet the mentor, and then you cross into that special world. You agree to take that challenge. You agree to get on that mission, and now you have your tests, your allies, your enemies. There's an approach. You're approaching now the ordeal. There'll be some sort of ordeal that you'll deal with. The ordeal is called death or rebirth. Now you're into seizing the sword. You've overcome that ordeal. You take the road back, and then you're back into the ordinary world again, but you're coming into the ordinary world a new person. You've experienced a figurative resurrection. You're somebody different now. You've had a rebirth. And then you return with elixir. That's really the idea, is this concept of elixir. I love that because it calls to my mind drinking something powerful and then becoming something more than what you were. So again, you may look at that and go, oh, good heavens, man, I never have time to do all of that. And so I will challenge you this, as we continue to step through. You may have time to do some of it. You may have time to think for a minute about, do all my e-learning games really just keep people in the ordinary world? Can I invite them into a special world that's a little bit different? Imagine for a minute that this happens. Maybe you use that concept of drop them into the story. We'll show you some examples here. I'm going to play for a minute. This is Rocky in a minute. It's literally Rocky 4 in 60 seconds. I'm going to just let it play. You may or may not be able to hear it all. That's okay. Most of us, I think, are familiar with the story. Watch for the elements in the hero's journey here. You're going to see refusing the call. You're going to see meeting the mentor. You're going to see stepping into that special world. You're going to see the ordeal and the rebirth. Rocky on top of the mountain. Then he faces the challenge and he takes the sword. And at the end, he's coming back into the real world again with, I think he's in the Soviet Union, Moscow. He's fighting. He addresses the crowd. So those are all the elements here. I'll just let this play here. We could have chose a million stories, but this one was easy to find on YouTube.
Papa. He ate his spinach every day.
These are the challengers. You can't do it. Refusing the call. He meets his mentor. Now he's deciding to move into the special world. This was an event, obviously, when Apollo Creed was killed. Very compelling story. Now he accepts the challenge and is ready to move into that special world where he will begin to face tests. Many of the tests Rocky experiences are his own tests. Now he overcomes them. He has the rebirth, and now he'll have the final battle. We all know what happens. He is a piece of iron. He cannot be broken. My Russian accent's really bad. Apologies to any Russian friends in the audience. Sees the sword. He can change. We can change. We all can change. So that's an example of what we mean by the hero's journey. Many elements of the hero's journey are depicted there. So you can take almost any really compelling story, really interesting story, and you can pick out all 12 of these elements that are likely present in the story. So let's apply this to games, right? To learning. So there's another just a depiction. I'm going to keep coming back to this time and again so you can see where we're at. You can see where Rocky kind of walked through that process. He didn't seize the sword necessarily at number 9, but he sees the prize, right? Obviously, he's now the world boxing champion, right? That's the sword. And then he's bringing a message back to everybody in this case. Well, let's talk about games, right? What do we know about games? This is something I think it's important to revisit. How many of you are already subscribers of the eLearning Brothers library to some way or another? Okay, you've seen a lot of our games, right? But let's be honest, they're kind of like quizzes that, you can do some true-false in and some multiple choice. A true learning game follows principles like this. And that's what we're talking about here is how do you, I think there's a place for the stuff that we provide, and I'm not saying that there's not, but I want to make sure that we understand there's a difference in just a game where somebody's going to maybe move a car along a path and answer questions. A real game has rules. You can fail, by the way. It's a voluntary activity. There's this element of choice throughout, a sense of engagement, entertainment, amusement, fun, something that would be interesting to them, that makes them want to engage willingly and voluntarily, some kind of a goal or a challenge. So, right, these are some key concepts. Again, we'll make these slides available to you if you don't already have them. It does tell a story and create some conflict, right? There's something like that should have, if it's a true game. Now, I recognize that sometimes we might all feel like that, this concept of gaming, right, gamification, it should apply to all learning. I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that you have time to do that. I don't know if your learners want to see a game every time they have to take an online course. But when you do have a compelling argument for an effective game, these are the concepts that we feel like you should probably think about. Don't underestimate the importance of aesthetics. Again, we are training very shallow people. And I can say that because I'm a dad of 5. My kids are, 18 up to 29, right? So I have some kind of younger kids and older kids, but we've all been training these audiences for a long time. That people expect to see something cool. So and that's where we can help, obviously. Aesthetics are something that we can provide. You probably have your own graphic artists. Strike a balance between challenging and difficult, and then give players control. By the way, this comes from a Forbes magazine article from last year, written by our own Stephen Bear of the game agency, who again is right across from us. He was on this stage yesterday, in fact. So these are some elements of good games, and it's important to remember them, and I think it's important to come back to them. On our custom team, when we do need a game, we often come back to these steps. We'll sit and we'll review these to make sure that, are there rules? Is there a sense of engagement? Is there a goal or a challenge? Does it look nice? Are we creating some conflict along the way? And again, I know it sounds daunting. That's why I said at the beginning, I love the concept or the idea of, can somebody in your organization help you? I know you got a lot to do. You can't do it all, right? I've been in your shoes, by the way. So I worked internally at an organization for many years as an instructional designer and then a design manager, training manager. I get it. There's a lot of pressure, right? But when you get those certain kinds of special projects where you do need to create a game, these are some of the things that are worth really thinking about. Now let's show some examples here. These are some slides, screenshots of some of our games in our library. Some of you probably have played a few of these games. I love the one on the left. That's a crossword puzzle. You can populate your own answers in there for, down and across. That's a cool little engagement. The one in the middle is one of my favorites. It's Wheel of Fortune. I'm sorry, Family Feud. That's a Family Feud type game. And I love that one too, because you can put in your own, options. I think the example here, what type of food do you like to eat with your fingers, survey says, or whatever. That's actually a cool game. There's a sense of challenge there. There's some cool dynamics involved there. This casino challenge game, and I'm going to take a minute to really dive deeper into this casino challenge game. When you click continue on this one, again, these are all templates from our library. We have hundreds of these, actually up to thousands of these now. When you click continue and you get into the casino challenge, some dice rolls, some cards pop up, and then you have to answer a multiple choice question. You answer the question, you get feedback, click next, and the same thing happens again. So I don't know that that's as much of a game as, it certainly doesn't apply to many of the elements that we're discussing here. So we recently had, I'll say the last couple of years, we had a client who was interested in building out on that theme. In fact, they were using that template there. And they're like, we really like that casino challenge idea, right? We like that idea of doing something internally. They actually wanted to build a course around a casino. It was for a project management organization, right? So their project manager had to come in, learn what was going sideways inside of that particular casino because they're off track, right? It's a big management project, big construction project. We're way off track. We're never going to hit our timelines or deadlines. Can you help us, right? So the PM, the project manager, we got any project managers in here? We might have a few. I got a couple. You know those pressures. It's not a job I can do well, but project manager comes in. They've got to evaluate risk. They've got to talk to the stakeholders. They need to determine budget, scope, schedule, all the things that PMs have to think about. That's what this course was about. So we sat down with our storyboard, and we'll talk about that in a minute too, and we took the time to develop a narrative and a story. So I'm going to talk about this concept of moving from the ordinary world into meeting the mentor, right? We want to take them from where they are, and they're entering this e-learning experience, and we say, okay, we're bringing you now into a special world. You're going to drop you right into this story where you're a PM, and you now need to, this is about formulating program change, which is a concept out there in PM world, right? How do you handle program change inside of an organization? So it looks pretty, right? Aesthetically, that looks nice. We actually use graphic artists to help us do this type of work. I oftentimes get folks who will say to me, I'm a shop of one or two. I'm the e-learning designer and developer. I do the graphics. I got to do everything. And I cannot stress enough. I really can't. And please know I've been where you are. Many of you, if you're in this world, my background's in instructional design, right? That's where I started my career, workplace learning and performance for many years inside of organizations. I thought I could design something cool and also make it look cool. And I'll never forget when an actual graphic artist says, that looks like you just went into PowerPoint and pulled stuff out of clip art. I mean, it just broke my heart. I was like, really? Yeah, he's going to show you what that should look like. Things like shadowing and lighting and shapes. And I never even think about stuff like that. But, and I don't get depressed, right? Because you might think, I'm never going to get a chance to do that. I'm never going to get an awesome graphic artist. Again, in your organizations, you would probably be surprised that there are people who are doing this stuff already. Even though you can't hire them full-time, you don't have an ad to staff, you can't go get someone, you can reach out to your organization. A lot of times people tell me their marketing teams are more than happy to help. If there's time, they have some time, they like to be involved. So you got marketing people in the, graphics people in the marketing program. So we start with this casino, right? You meet, you walk in the door. You're about to meet with your mentor. So she introduces you. By the way, these are all pulled from our library. Still images. That one's not too hard. I think that's 2 images. It's a background image of this sort of hotel lobby and an image of a woman. But we spent some time. I don't have audio here. There is audio in this course. I'm not playing it now. But hi, welcome. It's in medias res, right? We're dropping them right into the story. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We need some help. Carlos will meet with you in a moment. Please, just wait. Carlos steps up. He's our mentor. Hello. Welcome. So again, another still image, right? So you might say, well, how long did it take you to craft that story? Not too long. I think our instructional designer had that in a few hours, this concept of how we're going to run this whole thing. So anyway, I'll step through this quickly. He gives you the details. I'm going to load everything on your iPad. Now you're on a plane. The problem, hotel and casino, is in France. It's in the south of France. So you got to go to France. So now I'm on an airplane. I think we did a little customizing here that, she comes in, she's talking, here's your drink, whatever. You click into the iPad, you're going to learn now. You're going to scroll, and you're going to learn about all the content for the course. Here's the problem. Here's what happened. Here's what's going on right now. Here are the stakeholders, the general manager. Here's the head cook. Here's the contractor working on the project. I'm going to learn all my stuff right in there. I really like that approach because it's so different than, hey, Mr. Project Manager, you need to learn about program change. Here's 17 slides of all the components that you need to think about with regard to program change. We could have done that, but our client had already been doing that. They wanted something different. So it's pretty easy to say, here's a story. I'm three or four slides into the story now. That's where you're going to learn about all the stuff you need to know. Trust your learner, right? This is kind of what this is about. You may not always get that freedom. Your stakeholders may make you step people through slide by slide by slide, but that actually worked really, really well. Keep in mind that this client, this whole course was about recertifying project managers. So they had to take this course as a CEU, or a continuing education credit. So this is actually on their website now. Now I'm going to meet the guy. Welcome. Now I'm in France. Again, another just still image with a background there. And then we're into this. Now, this was entirely built on Articulate Storyline. This is where the game mechanics start to come in. We've got a few things. We've got a compelling story. We've got an opportunity for the learner to fail. This is actually pretty cool using stuff that you probably know way more than I do in Storyline, which is triggers, different layers. You literally are going to give the learner 10 chips to start, and then they're going to have to do these things. And by the way, everything here is a key learning topic. It's one of the lessons for the learning. It's our learning objectives are defined here. I need to analyze internal and external pressures. I need to create a benefits register. I need to evaluate survey data, and so on. As they click on each one, they jump into a little scenario. I'm going to interview stakeholders and create my stakeholder register. Well, what does that look like, and who are they? I'm going to meet real people, and we're going to walk through that whole thing. This was about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast the learner would roll. So, I mean, it was a fun project. We enjoyed it because these types of projects where you're able to craft a story, I think are the most compelling and interesting. And if you don't get a chance to do that a lot, maybe you can push a little bit internally to get that opportunity, to get that chance. And then our Storyline developers figured that out. And apparently it wasn't too hard. Some of you may look at that and go, oh, I see how they did that. You make your bet, you spin the wheel or whatever, and actually I don't think you spin a wheel, you just place a bet. And then based on the choices you're making, we increment or decrement your number of chips. By the time you get to the end, you've got 100 chips, or you got 50 chips or whatever. So that's how that rolls. So all of that is in this special world. You've left now the ordinary world. You're now in this special world where all of these things are happening. Everything you're seeing here, the tests, allies, and enemies, well, that's your stakeholders. Guess what? We actually had some enemies inside the organization. Do you ever see that? My project manager here is nodding his head. Yes, sometimes you get detractors who are actively trying to torpedo the project. And so we learned that, okay, there's some enemies that are in there that are going to throw you off, or they're going to throw you off track. Then as you're moving through, the idea behind, as you got to the end of the course, you do seize the sword, you do have the ordeal, you return back to Carlos in the States, and good job, you got the project back on track. And by the way, if you drop below a certain number of chips, in other words, you start with 10, you get to 0, you got to go back to a certain spot in the course, and you got to keep going. So there is sort of a move them back kind of a dynamic. So that's really what we're talking about there. I want to discuss this approach, right? How we move through the approach. That's one of the steps. I only got a couple more minutes here. Wait a minute. Do I go till 1 o'clock? Okay, ish. All right, so I got a few more minutes. How many of you, when you're designing, are storyboarding? I see a couple of hands. So good. That's a lot of hands, actually. This storyboard template, now it looks very, very busy, but this template is available as a free download on our library. So if you go to eLearningbrothers.com, do a search for storyboard template, you can find this thing, and you can actually use it in your courses. As you're crafting the whole 12 steps, if you really want to be thinking about it, we really recommend a storyboard approach. Certainly anybody in film, right? Anybody who's writing a book, I guess I can't say book, but film or TV, if they're crafting a story, they're using a storyboard approach, where you're kind of getting a sense, it's a rough sketch of what's going on. So, and again, it may go back to I don't have time to do that. I guess the challenge I would make to you is if you want to make a cool learning game, you don't not have time to do that. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. Or you may be wasting the time of everybody else as well. And you got to tell your stakeholders that, right? You got to tell your boss, okay, I think we can make a cool game. I need time to do that. We have to craft this story. And we can just do the stuff we've always done. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. So, I mean, that could be the argument, right? We need to take some time to do this. We can do it. It's October. We need to roll out this cool new code of conduct course in February or March, and we're going to do it in a game-based type of an approach. Okay, I need some time to do that. Our storyboard template is just one of many. It's a PowerPoint template, so everybody can open it and use it. We're doing a lot of things. The main stage is where things are happening. You can throw images in there, placeholder images. The right side on that developer notes side, you can't really see it, but we give notes to the programmer. Here's what I want to have happen here. I've had folks come and tell me who have used this storyboard that it's helpful because it lets them kind of float to their development team. Hey, this is what I want to do. Can you do this? And then the developers can tell them yes or no. And it just makes sense to them because I can see it on the main screen in the main stage area. I've got some notes here on the right. My media is identified there. Down on the bottom is narration. It's audio script. You know, what's being said. So how is it timing with animations? On the left side, we're bringing in characters. We're calling them 1, 2, and 3, right? And we're putting triggers on the bottom. Anyway, if you download it, you can see all those different pieces. It just helps. It's a template to help you with your design, which can help you craft the right story. So this approach, and I'm making sort of a metaphor here between the hero's journey and how you're approaching I guess I'm sort of challenging you to leave your ordinary world and come into the special world of storytelling, etc. So that was kind of a lame metaphor, but I kind of like it. All right, kind of at the end here. Oh, my battery's running low. I forgot to plug this in. Hold on a minute. I've had folks who told me they just printed that out and put it up on their wall to remind you. Again, you can find this online. If you search Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, we sort of broke it down like this. And it may be, actually, if you can get this slide presentation, you could probably show it to your boss or others inside and say, look, let me tell you what this is all about and why this is important. This may help you create an argument as well. You're certainly welcome to use it. We keep coming back to what the whole experience is. I want to take a minute to talk about the resurrection piece. That's literally, I'm now leaving the whole special world. I'm coming now back into my real world, right? Well, in the real world, the learner needs to confirm that they understand stuff. They learn something. We want to test their retention, right? So I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. These types of little games here, by the way, this is the training arcade created. This is something that our friends at the game agency created. Are any of you using this now from the eLearning Brothers library? So these are Unity-based games, which are awesome. You can customize them yourself. We would like to make the point that things that happen here in this resurrection area are actually little games that you can use to help reinforce key concepts. So I'm making another kind of a jump, but it's this idea that your resurrection or your road back for your learner could be these types of little games. So I hope that makes sense. In my head it does, but what I'm trying to say is, whereas you might think, I'm going to put games in my e-learning. Okay, I'm going to put those in my e-learning. Well, those are games. They're not going to be Hero's Journey type games, really compelling stories, if that's what you're after. But those games could support your story, what you're building. So you may be thinking like this. I'm challenging you to think maybe more like this, right? You're going to create a bigger story, a better story, using the elements of the hero's journey, and maybe use things like this on that road back, that road to resurrection, and so on. And it kind of applies. We've actually done that in some of our courses where we think, on the way back, the learner needs to show us they got it, so let's have them do some of this. And some of these usually will fit. It's a Bejeweled type game, or I've got thousands of these, right? So that's where we feel like some of the little kind of mini games, if you will, can fit in that part of the story. I don't want to belabor it too much, but hopefully that makes some sense to you. Here's our challenge, really, here at the end. We want you to return with Elixir, right, back to your jobs. Take a minute to come into this special world, and we all got to go back to the ordinary world of our regular jobs. It's really that eLearning Brothers Custom. That's what LBC means. We're the eLearning Brothers Custom team. It's that, oh, I'm not charging at all here. That's okay, we're almost done. that eLearning Brothers Custom Challenge, reputation as a true professional, somebody who engages learners, challenges learners, not just an order taker. And then that's my line from Rocky IV. We can all change. We can all take something cooler back to our organizations and do something that maybe we didn't do before we came to this conference, right? And make a difference back there in the real world where you have to go and do your regular job and all that stuff. So thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate it.